It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to It's About to Go Down. I'm Cathey Armillas.
And I am Marc Williams, and coming all the way from around the world, we got to hold up and just thank you. 12 hours from me, 12 hours, 5:30 in the morning. You are dedicated, my friend. But before I say anything more about Mr. G, that's right. That's what we affectionately call of our teachers. Mr. Something, right? I was Mr. W, he's Mr. G. Affectionately, Fursey, Gotuaco. An extraordinary speaker. I say that because I seen him light it up on stage firsthand. But here's what we have in common, even more than that. Teacher to teacher. English teacher, theater teacher. It's in our blood. It's in our blood. And Fursey's got us thinking today about who are the teachers that made a difference for you, and why did they make such a difference for you? Think about that today as we talk to Fursey. But even though that's what he wants us to think about, what he wants to talk about, it's probably very related. It's a topic we all geek out about. Dare I use the word speaking? And in particularly, Fursey, you want to talk to us today about this concept of going from me to we when sharing a message. Fursey, Gotuaco. Look, I almost messed it up. Fursey, Gotuaco. Mr. G himself. Fursey, welcome to It's About to Go Down.
Thank you, Marc. Thank you, Cathey. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Listen, let's start off right there with this idea. Talk to us about this concept in speaking, about why it's important to go from me to we. Like, what does that mean for people who don't understand, and why is it important?
I think it's about community. I think it's about building that community through shared experience, not just the experience of the fact that I'm talking and you're listening, but my story is my experience, and I want to find a way to engage with you about your experience and finding that common ground.
I love this topic so much. Right before we started, Fursey, I was like, Fursey's like, I could talk about a lot of things. I'm a theater teacher. And boy, let me just add a little bit more to what Marc said. I saw Fursey for the first time in Anaheim last year speaking on the World Champion of Public Speaking stage. And I'm sitting in my chair just dying laughing, cracking up. You are such a good speaker with such a good message and very great theatrics. And so you already embodied in my mind this awesome concept of going from me to we. Tell us a little bit more about why that's important for you, and when did you start to notice that was a shift that you wanted to make in your communications?
I think, it came out relatively recently. It only came out when I was trying to explain storytelling to some Toastmasters. I'm at a Toastmasters meeting. The topic is storytelling. And I'll tell you what, just because it's just the three of us here, right?
Nobody else is listening.
We're all friends here, right?
Yes.
I've never really had to explain storytelling before. No one has ever asked me to explain storytelling. And so they go, we want you to do storytelling. I went, okay, And one of the things that I stumbled upon was the notion of pivot points, where in the story, your life changes direction, or the hero's life changes direction. Something changes direction, and it's in those pivot points that you have to make sure the audience is still with you. Marc, do you ever take kids on a field trip?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, Cathey, you ever go on a field trip? You know,
Yes, I have.
and it starts out as a clump, and then as you go, it strings out like a single row of ants. And Marc, if you make a left turn, that's where you lose kids. You make a turn, and if you're not looking behind you, and you're not making sure that whoever's at the end is with us, then, everybody goes here and the rest of the group goes there. Pivot point. It changes. And that's where you have to make sure, are you still with me? Are you with me? Are you guys, did I lose you? Are you? Because if you're a really good storyteller, then you've got everybody thinking. You don't have everybody just following you. They're processing that information. And you have to make sure, okay, come on, come this way. Come this way. Forget about when I was 10. Now I need you to understand when I was 20 and something else happened.
Yeah.
And in that moment, that's when you're touching base with the audience and making sure are you with me? Are you with me on this pivot point? Does this pivot point resonate with you? That's a we experience. Yes, it does resonate with me. Yes, I've lost a parent as well. Yes, I've lost a child as well. Yes, I've had to make that emotional leap, that leap of faith, whichever it is, whatever it is that you're talking about. So that becomes the we. Otherwise, if it's just about you, then it's like being a grandparent monologuing to your kid. And the kid's going, "Why are you telling me this, Grandpa?" And here's the deal. You can't wait until the end, right? You can't just, come on, Toastmasters. You can't give a 6-minute story and then 30 seconds at the end go, has this ever happened to you?
Yes.
Has whatever happened? Because I'm already on my phone.
Has whatever happened. Oh, I love that.
It reminds me of theater. What's the point of being on stage if there's no audience? The audience is a part of the experience.
Right.
Even if you're at home watching television, there's a part of that experience that you want to escape into, that you want to be a part of. Like, nobody wants to be a passive part of your story. I love that. I love that. It makes me question, makes me wonder, why do we have to teach this? Like, why is it so difficult for people to stay in the me and not go to the we?
I think it's easy for people to stay in the me.
It is. But I think, and you guys tell me, I think that people want to be part of the we.
Yeah.
I think that it's innate to try to make that connection.
Yeah.
They just don't realize this is how you do it.
I agree, Fursey. And I think it would help if we backed it up a little bit, because we're talking specifically about storytelling. Let's just go to any communication. Many times communication is even think about when you write an email. You're like, oh, I need to get that thing from you. This is like da da da. Like, it's usually there's so much from your experience. We don't spend a lot of time in our life normally in a we experience as far as communication goes. And so I think we've only learned how to say things from one perspective. And when I'm training people on communication and speaking, I'm always like, this is the reason why nobody likes your vacation stories. Why? Because they only include you. Like, because usually the way people will tell them, now, Fursey, I would listen to your vacation stories all day long, because you know how to include the we. But most of the time it's like, oh, hey, I went to the Bahamas and this thing happened to me, and then this happened to me, and people are being a news reporter too, by the way. They're not reliving the story, they're just retelling it. And this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, right? So I think you're right, Fursey and Marc. Like, how and what do you think would be the number one thing? Fursey, I'll ask this to you first, and maybe Marc, your perspective. What do you think would be the number one thing the normal person watching right now that's going, yeah, like I don't know how to do that. What can I do to change my language?
I think that's a great question. And it sometimes it's as simple as language. Sometimes it's as simple as us. Or
Yeah.
when you're trying to, if you're a leader or manager and you're trying to move people forward, you're trying to make sure that this is our problem. It's not just your problem, it's our problem. We're in this together, right? We like to say we're in this together and we are going to move forward. And I think that's something important. Once you are in that discussion and it becomes your problem is XYZ, and here's how you need to solve it. It's like, no, let's solve this together because we're in a boat together. Literally, we're in a boat, not literally, excuse me, but we are in a boat together.
Literally, figuratively.
Yeah. Sorry, I just wanted, that is another pet peeve, right? Don't use literally unless you really mean you're in a boat. You rowing? You're gonna start the engine. What are you?
Yeah. I know. I thought our English teacher here will chime in and be like, "Did you really mean literally?" No, yeah, Marc, what do you think? Fursey, I love that. I love that even just a simple changing the way that you talk can really change the meaning and the emotion, not just the meaning, but the way I feel about you as a leader. If you're talking at me, ugh, but if I feel like it's we. Marc, what about you?
I wonder if I wonder how many people could think about why they're telling a story.
Mm.
I wonder if many people could think about why they're opening up their mouth to speak. I think if we just go back to storytelling for a second, and I want to tie it back to what you're saying, because I think it is all about communication. I think sometimes storytelling has been painted as a form of entertainment,
Mm. Mhm.
not as a way to deliver a message or a lesson. I mean, I know when we're in elementary school, we're like, and the moral of the story is, right? But I think we've kind of gotten away from that as we've gotten older. And you come home and, oh, well, what happened in your day today? Tell me what happened in your day today. What happened in your day today, right? And we're just spitting out details without a reason for telling the story, right? And I think if we could start thinking about, I got this story to tell, but why am I going to tell it? Right?
Mm.
And for me, here's an example. I was out with a group of friends last week, and one of them told a hilarious story. I'm not ready to give you the full details yet. I'll tease you on that one. But here's the point. He turned to me as the speaker in the room, and he goes, listen, I need you to speechify this story. And what I took that to mean was, I want you to find a way to not just tell this story for entertainment purposes, but to add a message behind it that people can connect to, that people can relate to, that people can even pass on to somebody else. You know, so I think we have to think about why. What is the purpose? What is the point we're trying to get across with this story?
I think that's a great place to consider what it means in our lives and in our community and in our culture. You think back to there's a fire, right? We're all gathered around the fire. Because if you're not at the fire, then you're out there in the dark and you're going to get eaten by something.
Mm-hmm.
You gather and then you pass story, myth, legend, right? All of those different stories that we now take for granted. But that's part of who we are. I think that communal. We're here at the fire, and it's not just for entertainment, but you're telling a story to teach the children. This is why we do what we do. This is why we go up the mountain, because of this. And this is why we drink or eat a certain something, because I want you to always remember what somebody did 1,000 years ago so that you and I could still be alive today. Something that we're passing along, something really, I don't know, like an energy or connective tissue, right? The gestus, that's the gestus of what somebody did before. And now it passes along in our gut.
Mm-hmm.
Too much, Mark? Did I go too far?
No, no.
Got really metaphysical there. I'm sorry. I just went back to my master's degree of what is the gestus of a character in a story.
Mm.
No, you just
I
got the
love the
wheel
connected
turning.
tissue energy. That's so good. It's so, yeah, I love that. All right, you two shared. I'm going to share one that I teach a lot. So when I'm coaching someone for a TED Talk, I think sometimes people misrepresent what a TED Talk is really about when if they're just a consumer of it, if they're consuming and digesting TED Talks, they're like, "Oh yeah, they're really good stories." And I'm like, "No, they're not." There's a really good story that backs up a really good idea, but TED Talks are about ideas. So I think it ties with what both of you said. And Marc, when you said before you open your mouth, you have to find out, like, why are you saying this? And so if I'm working with somebody on a TED Talk, I'm even taking it further because I'm like, okay, there's this idea. Like, what story will you use to elevate that idea and make people feel that that idea doesn't just belong to you, but it belongs to them too, so that it's both. And sometimes the stories seem so about the person that it doesn't work. For instance, Ted doesn't want anybody to go on stage and give that story about, oh, I got caught up in the mountains and had to chew my leg off so that I could get out. Because Ted's like, I mean, that I'm so glad you did that. But what does it really do for the person listening? Like 99% of people won't end up in a situation like that. So what's the thing? So maybe that's not a good story to go with the idea. So I love how we're kind of cross pollinating things because there's everyday speech and messaging ideas, and then there's storytelling, then there's theater, always having an audience. So yeah, I think just thinking about how we if we can stop and think when we're communicating, what's the best way for our messages to get through, whether that just be, I love Marc what you said, like you don't come like you come home and unload on people with details, boring. That's so boring.
But I tell you, I'm going back to this last year doing the whole contest and speech thing. When I remember the first time I gave my speech called Your Mom, right, which is what I ended up doing in the semifinals. And I remember just sharing it several years ago at a club. And it was the question that somebody asked me afterwards that completely transformed that message for me.
Mm.
And he asked, how could this be a lesson for leaders? Because at that moment, I was just talking about my mother. The concept of loving like a mother was inspired because he asked me, how could it be a lesson for leaders? Ultimately, he was asking for a general, a broader we connection and we experience. So I love this, but I want to pivot, if I may, to something that Fursey said earlier that I just gotta pick your brain about. You mentioned that some people wait until the last 30 seconds before they're like, have you ever?
And then they do it really fast too. Those 30 seconds.
I'm curious because I think a lot of people could really benefit from hearing this. And I don't know what answers we all have. Where does the pivot take place most effectively as you go from me to we?
I think a lot of times in storytelling, we focus on the environment, the placement. And I think you got to have that. You watch a movie and they show you the picture of the grass and the tree, or they picture, the bustling of the city. So you have to have environment, but you more than anything else need to understand the character and what the character wants. Because when you focus on what the character wants, then you can say, what do you want to your audience? What do we all want? That's how an audience sides with a character, right? Oh, I'm going to side with you because I want that too. Mm-hmm. I also want peace and quiet. I also want someone to love me. And then you focus on the other most important thing, and that's conflict. Because we all have conflicts. That's what the Greeks figured out thousands of years ago. There's only 4 conflicts, right? Man versus man, man versus himself, man versus society, man versus nature. Now, somewhere along the line, I think it was in the Renaissance, they came up with a 5th one, which was man versus his mother-in-law. But I think that's just, that's the modernist twist, right? That's not classical. So we're going to keep this classical. Sorry, I've just insulted like half the population right there, didn't I? This is going to be another episode. You're like, we can't go with this episode. Too bad.
He just offended so many people.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Come on, man. Anything, come on. Anyway, I think if you look at character and you look at conflict, then you start to see where the conflict changes, where the conflict itself changes. And how does the conflict change you? Because we all have that conflict in our life. Mm-hmm. And if you can, during your story, talk about where do you plug in, audience? You make it pronounced, right? We're very intentional about here's the conflict. And if you can make that really pronounced, then your audience has an easier time plugging in. They want to plug in. They just don't know, where to plug in.
Yeah. They don't plug in with boring details.
No, not unless they're like, oh yeah, I've been on an airplane too, so it's great, but you have to understand why, what,
yeah. You know what I like about the conflict position? I love that you really got into the kind of logistics of a story, because again, I'm going to go back to I don't think a lot of everyday people that just communicate and don't think about speaking think about character, conflict, environment, unless they've taken theater or unless they've taken improv or something that would give them that context. And it's such an easy thing, Fursey, that you said you bring up 4 conflicts. And what do conflicts bring up? Our beautiful E word, emotions. They bring up so many emotions. So sometimes when one thing that we, Marc and I teach in our Speaker Skills Academy a lot, sometimes we're teaching people like a container for quickly answering an idea or coming up with a speech idea. And we say idea, emotion, outcome. And I think sometimes people stumble on emotion, like how awesome, I want people to feel sad, but how do I get them to feel sad? But Fursey, you just unlocked it really easily. We'll find a conflict that would make the character feel sad, because then the audience will feel sad as well. The audience will relate to that. And even if they have to tie a different experience, it's not exactly the same. They will immediately relate to that. So anyway, I think that's a brilliant kind of way to think about it, because you can get to emotions quicker.
I never thought about it from that point of view, but I think you nailed it. And I think how the conflict changes is also how we have emotional change in our audience.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
Earlier, Marc, when you said it reminded you of something theatrical, That's actually one of the most interesting definitions I've ever heard of theater. It's exactly what you said. And this is coming from a, twice, thrice PhD, amazing professor I had in theater history. And he's trying to get the whole class to figure out what is the definition of theater? What is that? Everybody's like, everybody's coming in with their bright ideas. Like, yeah. And he's like, the closest we've come, he said, he goes, the closest we've ever come to anything that actually defines theater is a performer and an audience. That's it. Everything else is specific to a culture.
Yeah.
Or but those are the two common things, even in a puppet theater. Or using water as a character in a performance art like the Vietnamese. All of them, there's some kind of performance, whatever it may be,
right?
Some kind of an audience. And without that audience, nothing.
It's not theater. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the part that if you don't have an audience, then it's nothing.
I want to say a pet peeve, right? Well, I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but you bringing that up, Fursey, made me think, Mark, when people usually say like it's theatrical, what does that usually mean, you guys? What does it mean? When somebody says that, what does it usually mean?
Like you're performing it.
It's performing, right? Which is ironic because if you go watch a good movie or a play or whatever, like you said, Fursey, whatever the medium may be or whatever the perform, the best ones are the ones that don't make you feel like they're performing, actually. They're the ones where you're like, oh, I got so into that character. Like, how is that not, that's why sometimes the actor or actress cannot be removed from the characters or the genre of characters that they play because they're very convincing. So I just find the irony in that. And it's kind of a funny use of words when you think the only people that I think that do theatrical well are maybe 2-year-olds because they're putting on a big tantrum show, You're like, get up off the floor. That you're not dying. Come on.
You're not dying.
That's theater right there.
Yeah. You just didn't get the color shirt that you wanted.
Yeah.
I just didn't buy you the Mickey right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What it's got me also thinking about is when you talk about the performer and the audience. And then we go back to Cathey, you wanted to broaden this. How do you turn communication into a conversation?
Ooh, that alliteration is strong.
English teacher. It goes from you just talking to now we're connecting. I find that sometimes we get into these conversations and Mark's got this story that he loves telling. And then it's almost like people enjoyed it, but there's crickets after because they don't know what to do with it. They've not been pulled into it. But I find some of the most fascinating conversations is when Fursey tells a story. And because he focused on what the character wanted and the conflict, now I'm thinking about what I want. And when Fursey's done, I'm jumping into the next story. And then Cathey then jumped into it. And now we're having this exchange of stories. And what is really an exchange of stories? It's a conversation. But a conversation doesn't happen if one person speaking is only focused on me. So I love the application from me to we to make forget speaking on a stage, to make our conversations richer and more communal.
And Mark, here's an image in that singing. You can have one person singing and it's a single note or many notes, but it's just one person singing, but you can have other people harmonize with them together. Those in choir and music, they understand how they can blend together or you're blending together instruments. Whereas if in our world of speaking, you get more than one person talking and it's like chaos in the kitchen or in the restaurant, and you're just like, hang on, there's like four different conversations going, and you want to listen to this person, but this person's like, huh, what, wait, hang on, what? So we can't do that because of I don't know, the thoughts, right? But if we're singing together, then all of us singing together is okay. And so we have to, I think, consider what is that, what is the example, what is the metaphor, what is the model by which we want to use this, and maybe that's why it doesn't quite work. But the other thing is, you push only so that you can get the push back.
Yeah.
Consider you're in you are in a pool, bunch of kids. Okay, we're all kids in a swimming pool, and we want to get that water rocking, because we've been in there a couple hours now. We're bored out of our gourd, but we were like, come on, let's push. And then it gets bigger, and then push, and then it increases until finally mom comes out and goes, dude, you have just killed all the plants because you splashed all the water out. But that's because you and I, because we are pushing that water and we're getting the energy back and forth. And our as speakers, as teachers, are we waiting for the energy to come back and receiving it and acknowledging? Are we acknowledging to the audience that I'm getting what you're giving?
Ooh, I got another analogy that might have that. I'm just going to pile on another one because I love this. I love the water one, was so good. I just started playing ping pong again. My husband's really good. He spent like all of college playing ping pong, table tennis, whatever, right? So we put a table in our garage, and we've been playing, and I'm really learning the fine finesse of playing. And it's very different than a lot of other games because you really the table's not that small. When you're watching the people in the Olympics, you're like, how the hell are they doing that? It's insane. But normal players, Fursey, I think the example, like if you want the ball to come back to you, you have to hit it with enough force and energy that it will reach over far enough that they can easily volley it back. So if you're in a really good volley, it only works when you're putting enough force. And you're not putting too much, because if you do too much, you win, it goes off the table. Or you lose and it goes off, if it goes completely off the table. But I kind of like, sometimes my husband and I will he's like, I just want you to get your touch good. Let's hit it back and forth, back and forth. And I think that I love this analogy of when you're having a really great conversation, I have to ping something over to you with enough force and energy so that you can return it back.
That's a new word we use now, isn't it? To ping. I mean,
Ping.
you're using ping pong,
Yeah.
but isn't it right? That's what we said when we're going to send it. Just go ahead and ping me when that's ready.
Yep, exactly. That's true.
Signals back and forth.
Yeah, it's a ping. Yeah. Ooh, Mark's brain's working.
He is.
When he looks up, it's
He's thinking about dinner, though. He's got like.
Yeah, he's like, what can I have for dinner? I'm really hungry. First, he's like, I'm not even at breakfast yet.
Yeah, cheeseburger. I think I go for cheeseburger.
I did that. No, you all have me thinking about so many different things. First of all, Cathey, when you were talking about ping pong and the pinging and the volleying back and forth, it took me back to, I remember playing table tennis in my house. And the most fun we had was not seeing who could win, but it was counting. How high could we count just going back and forth?
Cooperative.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like, it's a cooperative conversation. Ooh, that's a good term, right? It's a cooperative conversation. Because it is. It's so much funner when you're like, then you start shaking. You're like, oh my gosh, we're at 150. Now I'm nervous. Like, I gotta keep it going. No, I love it. I love that.
Because you have to make that connection. And I do think that this is the struggle. Speaking, if we were to go back to that for a moment, is often seen and felt like a solo act. You're up in front of the room. You're the one speaking. everyone's looking at you. It can feel very isolated. And so it almost makes sense that in isolation, you're just thinking about you, you're just talking about you, you're just messaging about you, you're just storytelling about you. And then it makes people nervous. And so as I think about what you're talking about, Fursey, I also think that this message can be very helpful for people who are afraid to open up their mouth and speak because we often see it as something in isolation. We don't always see it as something communal. I am not up here alone speaking to you. We are experiencing this together. I'm going to give you something that maybe not before the 7 minutes up, you're going to ping back to me. But when I come into the crowd, oh, we gonna ping back and forth.
Yeah.
So I think this is a real anecdote for that isolation that people feel.
Here's the question that nobody's ever asked me, but I just wondered it aloud in my head. Yeah, great. So we could both answer it. Well, I didn't answer it. Yes, you did. Okay. Here's it. What has influenced me more as a speaker? My background in theater or my background in teaching? Because I think that's the same nature of teaching that has failed so many students, is that as a teacher, you think you're up there all alone. It's not. It's about connecting and engaging those kids. We're all together. And I think sometimes the teachers of younger kids understand this better because they have to play together. It's not just up there, sage on the stage, yammering away. And I always have to tell teachers, hey, listen, you don't have to give your kids information. All the information is right there in their pocket.
Yeah.
The entire world is in their pocket. What are you talking about? Do you think you know something that they don't? No, they can Google search anything. Your job is to light that fire. Right? Plutarch. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a lamp to be lit or a flame to be fanned, depending which translation you go with. Your job is to fan the flame. And maybe that's what we need to do as speakers as well. Your job is to fan the flame.
I love thinking about what would get somebody else fired up. You're having a conversation, because you know how sometimes imagine a place where you normally have like conversations where you're like, oh, I just want to die right now. And for me, that would be like going to a networking event. I love people and I'm an extrovert, so I like it, but I like to have good conversation. I don't like to have this conversation where somebody comes up and they're like, hey, so what do you do? Here's what I do. Like, and you're like, oh God, I can't. Oh, I just, right. But what if you got somebody engaged and I, Mark, I say this a lot on Speaker Skills Academy. I'm like the poor person that works at like a retail store or at the grocery store that has to hear the same damn question all day long. Oh, how's your day going? How's the weather? The weather's so great, right? Like, right. But what would actually get somebody fired up to have and so I love that, Fursey. What if I just met you somewhere and I was having a conversation, where could we exchange fire? Like, how could I get you fired up to want, like, to walk away from this conversation with me feeling like, oh, I'm fired up. That was awesome. I want to keep talking to her. That conversation was great. And, we have people in our life that way that we feel that. And so, yeah, you're right. You too, as teachers. And I know from both of you, and I know you long enough, Fursey, already to go, you're a great teacher. Just like Mark was. Like, when Mark was teaching, I can only imagine how much I have a funny story, by the way. I'm just going to go left field for 1 second. I got a chance to go to Brooklyn Tech one time and speak. Mark invited me in. And I'm a little bitty teacher because I started a group called Future Stars, which was kids learning to speak. And so he had me come in and talk to some of his students. Fursey, we're literally walking down the hallway just to go from like his office to the library, I think is where we did it. Mm-hmm. And everybody along the way, yo, what's up, Mr. Williams? Hi. Like, if that doesn't say what kind of teacher he is, I don't know what does. If he's not a good teacher, people be like, oh boy,
You're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I think that says the most about Mark that anything could. You're absolutely right, Cathey. And as teachers, we can't say that. We get, yeah, when I walk down the hall, people go, hey, you can't say that. It takes a witness,
I can
right?
say
It
it's
takes
a
a
witness.
witness. And Cathey had to be there to see it and then tell the story. Go
Yeah.
tell the story about Mark. And
Yeah.
therein lies your, I guess I'm sort of sorry, I kind of went tangent on that.
No, it's
Therein
so
lies
good.
the
It's so
importance
good.
of you as a storyteller. You're the witness. You witnessed this
Witness.
event, and now you have to continue to tell the story about the legend of Mark because
Yes.
Mark can't tell the story by himself.
He cannot. He looks like a jerk if he says that.
Exactly, exactly. And therein
And
lies
he's no jerk.
no, yeah. It's just like I can't go tell my mama how good I am. No, she's got to
Yeah.
hear somebody. Mark's got to come over for dinner and go, you should have seen Fursey. And then my mom will go, oh, really?
Oh, I'm so proud.
Yeah, I didn't know that
I
about him.
didn't know he was that good.
Telling
Oh,
you.
we have to play a game. Mark, we have to play a game. First, we have to play a game.
Okay.
Sometimes I like to play a game on the show. And I just think, Fursey, you made me think of something that I do in my storytelling class because I never like to sit up there and talk either, right? So I get people doing a game, and one of the games or drills that I have them do is called POV. And a lot of people use POV if you look on the internet. Point of view, I'm walking in and my mom's brushing her teeth, whatever, right? There's all these point of views. And so people are doing all these stories. I love telling a story from different point of views. So let's take this story. Let's just take the story about Mark. Just a simple story. It's easy. I'm walking in the hall with Mark, and we're all going to be different people. Mark, you don't get to be you, okay? You have to be somebody else. Mark, you be me. I'll be the kids, and you're Mark Fursey, okay?
Okay.
In the story, just in the story. We're gonna just play with
That
different
is that
point of
just because
views.
our haircut? Is that why you picked me?
I know, I know. Yes.
What are you trying to say, Cathey? Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, Fursey, why don't you go first? Like, and you
Oh,
could do
Cathey.
anything, right? You just play. It could be you're kind of telling this story, and then we'll build on it from different point of views.
Cathey, you ever remember the water fountain being this low to the ground when you were at school?
Mm, that is hilarious. All right, Mark, build on this. Come on, you can build on it.
I don't remember the water fountain being this low. I don't remember the long hallways, but I am starting to think about the English teacher I had and going through the hallways with all of my friends and how crowded it was and how full of life it was. I mean, the last time I was in a school, I can't remember. So it just feels so awesome to be here. Thanks, Mark, for inviting me.
Yo, look it. Mr. Williams is coming down the hallway. Oh, he is so bomb. You know what he did last week? He had me come into his office and we played games for an hour after school. And then, oh, what's up, Mr. Williams? How's it going?
Hey,
We
it's
all
going great, kids. It's going great. Hey,
oh,
did you do your homework? You remember you owe me a story today.
Who's
mm.
that kid? Where does he get all of this energy? What are you teaching these kids, Mark?
Yes, I love that. I love it. Even though we just like hacked this together, it's fun to think about because I think also a really good story or a really good speaking is thinking about the different point of views. And sometimes when you tell your own story, if you can tell it from their point of view, you, even just switching the point of view, because usually we just tell it from ours. Oh, I did this thing and this happened and this happened. Where Mark, if you were telling the story, you could kind of talk about yourself, but in a different way. You could say, I brought Cathey, you could use my point of view. You could just say, I
Mm.
brought Cathey into my school, and first of all, she was amazed at how big it was and how much of a, arts and STEM school it was. And then I got a little embarrassed because a bunch of my students came and I mean, there's different ways you could tell it where you're like, where you use a different point of view, where it doesn't just have to be you repeating the detail, right?
I like that. I like that hack. I like that hack. You know, I'm taking that and I'm also taking what you asked earlier, Fursey, about what influenced you. And then that took Cathey to this, like getting people fired up. It reminded me of something I do during my workshops. So since we're talking about workshops, doing this whole community building thing,
Mm.
I got this whole thing all like planned out. It's all outlined. You know, Fursey, just like a good lesson plan. It's all lined up. But then something happens during this lesson that didn't happen during any of the other classes you taught.
Mm.
Because even though you've got the outline, even though you've got every part of your lesson ready, as you allow your students or your audience to get engaged, they start pinging and contributing different things.
Mm.
And now you know you fired it up because what you went in to do took an entirely different direction. And if you're not a control freak who's like, I got to bring it back. No, we can't keep, no, I got to finish this lesson. I got to finish this speech. I got to finish this workshop. Can I tell you the most wonderful thing I heard during a workshop was this woman came up and said, it didn't feel rushed. It didn't feel like you were trying to get to your end. You let us talk and you let us process.
Mm.
She said, Fursey, what you said. She said, you didn't make it all about you.
Mm.
You made it about we. And I think for anybody who runs workshops out there, like, let go of the reins. If they start talking, let them talk because now they're connecting. Allow that to happen because as Fursey's saying, this is not a solo spotlight thing. This is an entire auditorium we thing.
Mm.
Create opportunities for people to talk.
And we community. I mean, yes, it's the we in the auditorium, but how big can you make that space that you are impacting? That's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about impacting our space, and how big is that space? And that's what kids do when they act out. Sometimes they're just trying to they're trying to impact the space between you and them, but it's also the classroom. You know, the class clown. They're trying to see if they can impact their space. And if you're a teacher, you go, yeah, I'll let you have the floor, but first we're going to do this, or you do that. You got 60 seconds to do what you need to do, and then we're going to do what we all need to do, right? You deal, you know what I mean? And that affirms who they are, and that's what we're talking about when you talk about, Mark, that you give them time to talk. You're affirming that they have something to contribute.
Yes. Yes.
Not I'm the wise man on the hill and you're peasants. You know, no, everybody has something to contribute. You guys ever seen Waiting for Godot? A production of Waiting for Godot?
No.
It's just primarily, Cathey, it's two people in a desert wasteland, you know, one tree, that's it. Two people. At some point there's other characters, but it's just two people. And at one point, Cathey, they bring in your ping pong. What you said, at one point, because they go back and forth, and that's all they get. And at one point, somebody says, return the ball once in a while, will you? Because there's only two of them. If you don't return the ball, then what the heck are we doing? And so there it is, ping pong.
I love that.
The need for ping pong, because you can put the one side up and just bang against the wall, but then that's just you practicing. That's not you really connecting.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this.
Life philosophy, ping pong.
Yeah. Ping pong, exactly. Return the ball. I love that.
Return the ball once in a while, will you?
I love that. I even wrote it down. I love that. Fursey,
You
I know this.
know,
Oh, go ahead, Mark.
oh, well, I'm going to let you say this, but I just got to say this. Fursey, I can so appreciate the reference to Waiting for Godot. There aren't many people who can weave Waiting for Godot into a conversation. I applaud you.
I try. It's a game I play with myself. Can you get Waiting for Godot into this conversation? 2 minutes.
And he's like, yes, I can. Cathey opened the door with the ping pong. Here we go.
You ought to see me at a job interview.
Oh, that is so great. Fursey, I have something that seems like it's a left field question, but it's just been bubbling in my head the whole time you've been talking. And I see you as a really great character. Same with you, Mark. When I think about you, I think there's a lot of things that make you a great character, the way that you speak and walk around, and nobody could accuse either one of you of being dull or boring or monotone or anything. What do you think makes a good character? Because I think sometimes, and I'm just going to preface it with this because I get this a lot in like corporate communications, right? It's like, oh, people are introverted or extroverted. And I'm like, oh, introverted people sometimes are the best speakers ever because they put a lot of thought into what they're going to say before they just say it. So what do you think makes a good character?
Mark, you want to try go first?
I will. Here's my answer to
I'm
that.
going to
Here's
ping
my
it to you, but you better return it.
I will. I will.
You better
I'm
return it to
curious.
Fursey.
I'm so curious what Fergie has to say. Um, it's imagination.
Mm.
You know, my wonderful, amazing, super awesome wife. I say that because, you know, anytime she's going to be watching, she's got to know I just said that, right?
She is, though.
We were talking about mindfulness the other day, and she goes, you know, because I do a lot of it, and she goes, I think the reason why you can do it so well is because you have such an imagination. And she used to teach AP psychology. And so she says people who are very in tune with their imagination do very well with like
Mm.
mindfulness and meditation. And when I think about speaking, I feel that it's my imagination that helps me as a speaker because I can visualize the environment. I can visualize the character. I can visualize and imagine the conflict that is going on in front of my face as if I'm not in an auditorium right now. Like I'm where I'm talking about, and I get lost in it. And I think of a lot of people can start tapping in to their imagination, they can become the character that lives within.
Mm.
And Fursey, here's how I'm going to ping it to you. When I saw you on stage hanging off of a chair, talking about
Ziplining.
I didn't see you on a stage on a chair. I saw you ziplining. You opened up my imagination, and that's how you brought me and everybody else into that moment. Ping.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. I do. I do. I think character is when you have an outlier.
Mm.
Everybody tends to think of us as stay in your lane. And so everybody's doing the same exact thing. Think about some of the movies you see. They like to establish what, status quo, right? So if everything is status quo, then there's no character. Everything is the same.
Yep.
Character is when something is different.
Mm.
And either the event is different or somebody is different from everybody else because they're zigging when everyone else is supposed to be going straight.
Mm.
That's character. And I think what a lot of people think about with me on that stage is I did things that people don't expect to see at a speech contest. And it's not necessarily that that's what I plan to do, but I just innately know that when people are in a rhythm, they're going to fall asleep. When things, if when the audience knows what you're going to say next, they're zoning out already because they know what you're going to do next. So you have to do something that's not expected.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that that's the whole point of speaking, but it is to say you have to fight with audience's expectations. You have to fight with the fact that everybody has a phone in their pocket and they're going to pull it out and start doing something very interesting with it. You're competing against that. And how do you compete against that? So you have, just like vocal variety.
Yeah.
Your vocals have to shift in different ways. And same with your gestures. Not that you have to keep your hands moving all the time, but here's an example. And I'm sorry, I'm going to monologue just a little bit. Here's an example. There's an axis, right? There's a plane, plane. There's a plane right here, and the left hand stays on the left and the right hand stays on the right. And most people, when they gesture, they keep them right there and they never change. The moment you bring it over, it changes. And there's a plane right here as well, the horizontal. And so if you do something different, then it gets the audience's attention. Like when I do this, you're like, where does hand go? I broke out of the box. You can't see it, but it, you and now my eyes are breaking the plane. So we have to outlie. We have to be out from the norm, out from the status quo. And that's what makes people interesting. You're like, oh, that's different. And we can either be scared of it or we can celebrate it.
Yeah. That is so great. Great answers, both of you. And I think I'm gonna add my marketing hat to this because I'm just like, I started thinking about what you both were saying, and I was like, oh, everybody in every sector that I can think of. I think about writing a book. When you write a book, like let's say you write a book with a publisher, that publisher that year will be publishing hundreds of other books, even just within that one publisher. I'm not even talking about even outside of that publisher in the whole world. I'm just talking about within that one publisher. What will stand out? Which ones will they choose to lift up and market more because they know that this is probably going to be a standout book that we're going to choose to promote? Um, uh, Shoe companies, I got a bunch of shoes behind me, right? Shoe companies, right? What will they do within their industry to stand out and to be imaginative and stuff? So yeah, I mean, I think what you both are saying runs really deep across all industries, all things. It's just how our human brains work and connect. It's really good.
Since you brought up the marketing, you reminded me of Disney World, Cathey. And if you've ever gone to Disney World or you've gone to a place like Six Flags, here's the big difference. Both wonderful places. I enjoy both of them. At Six Flags, they call them rides. At Disney, they call them experiences.
Yep.
And even as you're standing online, you're in a world, like you're a character in this world. Your belief has to be suspended because you're not just looking at a wall. You're not just looking at a stanchion that's dividing all the people online. Like you are now in this experience.
Yeah.
And when you talk about publishers trying to figure out which book to push, it's the book that, to Fursey's point, does something different and something that captures people's imagination. People want to escape for a moment.
They do.
Yeah.
They do, Mark.
And I just want to say one other thing too. First of all, the chair. Fursey, do you remember? Right before, it was a couple hours before we were about to go on stage, they almost said you could not stand on the chair. Oh, Cathey, you weren't there. I was like, what is he gonna do? Like, that's it. How does he not do it without playing with the chair? They almost ripped it away. Um, but they let you do it. You did an amazing job. And what I wanted to say about that unexpected thing that you were talking about is, to me, it ties back in with the we and the me.
Mm.
I expect, as you go up there and you speak, or as we're sitting at the dinner table and you start telling your story, I expect, Fursey, you're going to tell me one of your amazing stories of something you've gone through. What I don't expect is how I'm going to feel connected to it and how you're going to draw me in. And that, not your amazingness, but how you amazingly pulled me in is what keeps me in.
Wow. Wow. I feel your passion, Mark. I do. I feel the passion within you, and I see where you and Cathey make a really great pair, because one explores the highs and lows and the dynamic, and the other's like, yeah, stay grounded. This is solid. Stay grounded. This is solid, right? And you have both of you bring something to that party where it's like, yes, but you need both. You need the ping and the pong, the yin and the yang, And so I appreciate that. That's really
Mm.
terrific. And I think we have to bring that as speakers. You've got to do both.
Yeah.
You've got to be able to bring it down and the calm, and yet let people play a little bit.
Mm.
You have to have both. In a class that has no structure, it just sort of becomes chaos. Kids do need a certain amount of this. Say, here's the fence. Play within the yard. Play within the yard so that we don't disappear. We don't get hit in the street. Play within the yard. But in the yard, I'm going to give you lots to play with. You got
Yeah.
to give me something that sparks my imagination, like you talked about, Mark.
Mm. Yeah. I love this conversation, Mark. I was going to ask you both, but you already just did it. Like, you summed up what I think that we've been talking about the whole time, which conversations, speaking, storytelling. It's all about an experience. It's all about what we can make the other person feel. It's not just how entertained they are by us, the storyteller or the speaker. But Fursey, I'd love to ask you the same thing. Like, what do you think you got out of this conversation? What kind of bubbled up for you today?
I think what both of you have imprinted on me is the level of experience you both have in this field. I think I've appreciated that the most. I think that's most of what I'm getting is where you both bring your level of experience, your knowledge, because now it's wisdom, right? Because of your experiences coupled with your knowledge, now it's wisdom. And I'm like, okay, I'm watching both of these guys and I'm seeing how they bring it together. And I'm seeing things that, oh, okay, I appreciate that. And I'm gonna take that and grow with it. That's where I grow from both of you in this space. And sometimes when you're alone, you're not sure exactly who you are or where you are. Only by seeing people along the spectrum do you go, oh, okay, here's where I belong. I'm over here. I appreciate where Cathey is. I appreciate where Mark is. Now I'm over here. And I understand that's where I need to go to. So both of you bring an incredible frame of reference to me. And I appreciate the things that you've said to affirm my thoughts, because a lot of times if both of you went, oh, he's kind of a nut job. If I shared my idea and both of you went, huh, okay, looks like it's going to be a 5-minute segment. We're going to shorten this thing because that wasn't. Then I'd be like, well, I guess I really am out in left field. But I appreciate you finding a place for me in your spectrum of information.
Oh, Fursey. You are so great at bringing, even when you said that, you brought me into the, like I felt like that was a story in and of itself that was really good. I appreciate all the thing. I appreciate that three of us, I love the thing that you said. I appreciate that all three of us came from different perspectives, different experiences. But we're kind of same, but different. We're all like saying the same thing in different ways. But both of you have said things at different point of views and different angles that have made me reaffirm some of the things I already believe and also make me challenge my thinking a little bit to see it from a different perspective. So thank you both. Fursey, you're awesome. I'm so grateful that you've been on this show today. I've loved every second of this conversation. You are a great character, really great character. And I loved having you here. Could you tell our audience, anybody watching, because it's not just the three of us. I know that there's people out there that are watching our show. Where, yeah, I know they're not here now, but I know they're out there. And I'm sure they're going to want to follow you and even watch that talk that we keep referring to, your world champion of public speaking speech. That was so phenomenal. Please tell us where they can find you.
They can find me at furseygotuaco.com. I'll spell that for you. But I'm sure the Google search now it'll populate FurseyGotuaco.com. It's the only advantage to having a name that you're the only Fursey Gotuaco in the world, right? I mean, there's actually only four Furseys. There's only four Furseys in the world. That's it. It's not like it's a common. Yeah, it's an Irish name.
Ooh, it's a
You'll have to
beautiful
invite me
name.
back and I explain that one. But yeah,
How
and
about
any
that?
Gotuaco out there comes from my family. Any
Oh,
Gotuaco is related because the original
oh.
name is Go, but because of it being in the Philippines, it's Gotuaco. So no other Goes are Gotuaco.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if you know Gotuaco,
Oh, fun
don't
fact.
hold that against me. Okay, there's some people.
Oh, oh, no. Are you kidding? It makes you a
There's some,
character. It
yeah,
makes you a
exactly. There's
character.
characters.
If you're an outlier, you're an outlier. Makes you an outlier. No, this is
You're
awesome.
different, all right. You're different.
Definitely,
That kid
definitely
is
different.
different. Something ain't right about that kid.
Everything is right about that kid. Fursey, this has been so great. Thank you for being on the show. Anybody watching, please look him up. I'm literally gonna go as soon as we hang up. I'm gonna go look up your website and check out your stuff myself. I've enjoyed having you. And if anybody's watching right now and you're like, oh, I know that there's somebody that I know that wants to be on the show or should be on the show, reach out to Marc and I. We have a website, it's about to go down show.com. There's lots of ideas we love to explore, but none as fun as what we talked about today. We always love about speaking and storytelling. It's really great. Fursey, thank you for being on the show. We always say that, it's about to go down. We chose that because it's a fun little thing between Marc and I. When we would speak, we would say, oh, it's about to go down. And it went down today in a big, big way. It really did. So thank you for that. It went down. And so anybody watching, it went down this time. It'll go down next time. Please join us on the next episode and the next and the next. And Fursey, thank you again, my friend, for being here.
Thank you, Cathey. Thank you, Marc. Thank you both. I appreciate you.